Ike here, and today I'm going to start page 3 of First Sun and Sword.
I think first I would like to talk a bit about visualization. So, picturing in your mind the page you're going to draw before it's drawn. So, we have a thumbnail typically that we work from before we're going to pencil the page. And here I do have a very simple, 2-inch tall thumbnail I went off of to make this page. But I did not practice the poses or the camera angles or any of the details I was going to have to draw on this page. So when I'm sitting there thinking as my pencil hits the page, or even before that, can I picture what a page by me would look like? Because we all have artists where we like their work a lot, and we could picture what a page by that person would look like. But then when we sit down to do our own art, we can't tell what it should look like. And part of that's okay. I think it's natural because we are becoming ourselves. So in a sense, you can't know yourself yet, what you're going to do. And your pencil's finding what you're going to do as you scribble your way out, as I'm doing here. And you're utilizing skills and tricks and things to find those shapes and everything too, which is what I'm doing here with this giant bug and the dust and sand that's getting kicked up as the boy's getting smothered there in the bottom right. But to be able to picture what a page by you would look like and then produce that on the page, I think is very valuable. So when I'm working on this page, I put the first 2 pages of the comic on each side of it so that I have it right in front of me, what this comic looks like, and a reminder of what my work looks like, my ink lines and stuff. And maybe I didn't need it, but I just feel more comfortable if I have that right on hand. I can also check like their faces and bodies, kind of referencing previous pages and go, okay, yeah, I'm getting this right. It's a new comic still, so I'm a little unsure on those things. I'm sure over time I won't need to reference as much. I'll just know these characters well. So that can help kind of having it on the side, but I think it's a powerful tool to be able to visualize what the page is going to look like the way you do it, your style. So obviously that comes with practice and experience. If you draw a lot, then you're going to be able to picture your own work. And obviously that's going to be really important, is drawing often. But I also think there's just a skill of being able to picture something that you haven't seen before, that you can develop through practice. And so it's easy enough to just be like, well, I know how to draw. I'm just going to start drawing this page. Try to just add that step. At least that's worked for me. It's been helpful lately that I've been trying to do this. Trying to add that intentional step of thinking of what is this page going to look like. So on this topic as well, it's related. Artists, I don't think I'm alone in this experience, that we typically have drawn on smaller paper. And then here you are with a comic page that's quite a bit larger. And you're drawing kind of like less detailed, just simply larger. So, I mean, the reason we draw larger, obviously originally, this was so you could add more detail and get cleaner lines. But at the same time, you have to draw something larger. You're making a very large curve with your pen, and you're used to being able to do that. It's easy to get a smooth curve if it's only 2 inches long. And that's something that I see beginners mistake a lot, is that they are drawing a comic page as if they're drawing in their sketchbook or something they're used to, which is drawing that small size. So something to help you get better at that, and it's what's worked for me, is to spend more time drawing on large paper. Spend more time actually drawing comics. So if you're drawing in a sketchbook and you're doing, figure drawing and whatever, why not just draw on a large comic book paper? I know that can get expensive too, but why not just draw a comic with panels and with that larger size? at least intentionally try to draw larger in your sketchbook. Can you draw in a way that you're thinking this is a comic page, even though it's a smaller piece of paper? Can you pretend that this is how you would want to draw it on the larger page that you're going to like shrink down for the comic? And alternatively, something else that helps me is to draw really small, because when we draw large, we tend to put a lot of details. And so if I can draw my figures at a very small size and I get the most important details down, then I can blow that up, like make that larger and not add details. Like not add more just because it's larger, not like increase that, but just take those real basic shapes that I've gotten down in that small size and just make it large. Again, now you're drawing large on the paper, and it's kind of a skill you have to learn. It's something you have to practice, I think. Here on the page here, I've got cracks forming. There's this bug under the sand. Cracks form in the sand. Don't ask me how, because I know sand is like really soft, obviously, but maybe it's harder. I don't know in this spot, but cracks form and like air shoots out and sand shoots up in these clouds. So these little black textured spots I put in those clouds, that's to imply the texture of the sand. I know it's in high contrast, but my style here is high contrast. So, and I might even leave this black and white. So I need to be able to throw in those details. So that was my attempt. That's why I did it that way. Yeah, here same thing. I have sand getting thrown up, so that's why the shadows I threw on that leg, I left gaps in between, because that's where the sand is coming in front of it, blocking our view. And I adjust that even more a little bit later. I'm trying to get exactly how much should I obscure the insect arm behind the sand. I mean, this is kind of on the visualization topic. I think another thing to consider is planes. And I mean that like foreground, middle ground, background. When you think about the comic page and what you're drawing, you're not only drawing larger than you're used to on a comic page, but you're going to have a different way you execute the line work on a figure that is in the foreground or that's very large on the page versus a very small figure on the page. So if you have a figure in the foreground and a figure in the background in the same panel, one's large, one's small, you're going to execute those lines differently. Now, if you're doing digital comic book pages of art, then obviously you can just zoom in and decrease your line weight and do both the same way. But I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because that will take a lot longer. And I think it actually tends to not read as well to the reader. So thinking in those planes of foreground, middle ground, background, and try to simplify what your layout is, your setup for that panel, that it only has those three planes. Because if there's too many planes, depth to the image, then you're not going to be able to communicate. It's going to get messy. It won't be able to be easily readable to the audience, to the reader. So, like here with this bug is clearly the focal point. But there's like a foreground element in front of this. There's a visual plane that's in front of the bug, which is where the sand kicks up in front of him from his horns. And then also where the first sun is falling just under my hand is that part where he's kind of falling and the sand is coming over him. So there's this cloud of sand coming up, or this wall of sand coming up with him under it. And then there's the sand getting tossed up to the left there. And that is like even in front of the visual plane of the bug. On the bugs plane, there is sand getting kicked up, and then there's one more plane behind that, of a back plane of the clouds that are up the highest. Those fluffs that are the highest on the left and right, those are like even a plane behind that. So when I'm drawing those fluffs of sand and cloud, the amount of complexity to the fluffy curve lines, the amount of texture or detail or contrast in those little dots that I put on them to show the texture of the sand, it is different. And it's not just an infinitely different, but I've done it by planes. So the background cloud has the least complexity of curved lines and the least complexity of dots for the grit texture, and then the middle plane and the foreplane are each increasingly more so. And that just helps keep it simple, keep it easy to read. Remember, it is not reality. This is not meant to look like a movie or like a photograph, because I actually think that at least my way of doing things, and I think many would agree, but I think you do a disservice to the reader, because it's not, they're reading this image the way you would read words. They're not looking through every piece of it. So if it clearly communicates the action and breaks things down for them clearly, that's probably good, because their eyes are only going to be on that image for like half a second or less. Like, I'm just guessing, but when I read a comic, my eyes touch that image very briefly. And if I can't make sense of it in that brief amount of time that I want to look at it, then it bogs me down. It makes it harder to enjoy the story, because I'm forced to slow down the pace of the story in my mind to placate the artist. And I don't want to be that artist that's getting in the way of the reader's experience. And so it's a win-win situation, I think. Yeah, so I guess I'm on this topic of visualization. So sometimes I kind of mentioned this earlier, but there are times my pencil's trying to find the shapes, find the facial expression that I'm not sure about yet. And I think that is the default for artists, but to visualize it before you even move your pencil, I think that's a step that's easy for us to forget. So I try to do that. But I noticed with this facial expression on the last panel, I remember that I was penciling that and had to erase and just play with it until I found the expression that felt right for this boy getting covered in the sand. So what I've done there is I wiped out a paint brush on the spots that I wanted to clean up a little bit. I'm doing it again here. And just cleaning up the lines so that when this scans in, it is ready to go. I don't like spending time doing file cleanup. So there's panel 1, the cracks in the sand, and then the explosion of the bug coming out, and him getting buried. And that's page 3.